Not Another Ecom Podcast. I'm Ian Kaneshiro. I want you to picture this. A garage overflowing with products, a laptop blinking with opportunity, and a single sale that turns into a symphony of success. That's the world of retail and online arbitrage. And it is also the world of today's guest, Pete Nelson, an Amazon aficionado whose knack for flipping finds into fortunes has made him a beacon for up-and-comers in the e-commerce space through his podcasts and social media channels. Alongside his business, Pete co-hosts the Prep Talk podcast, which is a goldmine of ground-level insights that make navigating Amazon's fast marketplace not necessarily easy, but definitely more tolerable. And so Pete has turned a side hustle of online selling into a full-time business. And today he's here to share the joy and the journey to ensure that your e-commerce voyage is both lucrative and hopefully lively as well. So Pete, welcome to the podcast. And, we'll dive into some of the fun side of selling on Amazon.
Yeah, Ian, thanks. I really appreciate you having me. Excited to be here.
Great. So Pete, why don't you just kind of dive in and, tell us a little bit more about yourself, a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So, I've been reselling products for, probably like 5 or 6 years. Kind of started in more of like the niche, like polo or collectible space. And then, was living in eBay and then really kind of transitioned over to Amazon, seeing how much more scalable it is. Still working 9 to 5. So time is, a little bit limited. And so leveraging some of the, FBA opportunities and those logistics has really been helpful for keeping the house clean and, just getting, products prepped, at a prep center and not having to be in like all of the, prepping and packing. So over the last probably like 6-7 months, I've pretty much primarily sold on Amazon and then really took advantage of the networking side of that community and have made some really great connections that have made my experience a lot easier and more scalable.
Yeah, that's really good. It's one of those things that jumping into like this online business and then, starting with eBay, moving to Amazon means that there are different systems that you have to learn and different opportunities, but different challenges. And, I think having that network really helps a lot of people kind of navigate through that. How did you find that transition between the two? Were there similarities? Were there differences? What was challenging there?
Yeah. So probably in January, I had no idea what a prep center was. I had no idea that people were doing this, a little bit more scalable than I had been doing it. And I was kind of reaching this point of burnout with fulfilling everything, working my 9 to 5, doing family activities, that sort of thing. And so I met Zach Sedano in like a Bolo group. He kind of just peered open, that lens into the space. And then I just ran with it. I started just binging Buy Box Bandits, became familiar with Miles and really, took that opportunity and ran with it because all the information's out there now. A few years back, it really wasn't. And so tapping into all of the free content to just begin to familiarize with all of the concepts and terms gives you a huge leg up. There's probably hundreds of episodes that you can tap into. I mean, it's a long process, right? When you're first starting, you're transitioning from eBay where basically you just slap a label on it and then you start creating FBA shipments en masse. I mean, there's a lot to learn.
Sure.
So doing that in a way where, you're just leveraging the existing content and then meeting people within the space has been extremely advantageous, right? So I have a problem. I message a friend that's probably had the problem and they'll just tell me how to do it very quickly. Whereas, 2-3 years ago, I was kind of doing this as a lone wolf and it's not as fun. And, you learn like half the rate. So that's been a huge part of the change in how things have, improved and, I'm doing higher numbers than I was previously.
Most definitely. And, it's working in a silo is challenging. It doesn't matter, what you do, if it's, in your Amazon business or eBay business or your 9 to 5. When you work in a silo, you don't get that opportunity to, see mistakes. They talk a lot like politics about like echo chambers and stuff like that. Working in a silo is like basically working in that echo chamber in your head.
100%. Yeah. And I think a lot of people struggle with is that like everything in life at this point is kind of a funnel. And so you have to make sure that your funnel is a good funnel or you're never going to get to the place that you want to be. Like now my funnel is a bunch of new information about Amazon. It's business oriented. 2-3 years ago, it may have been sports. So like creating the funnel in that echo chamber is critical, especially when you're starting something new and difficult, because, I see a lot of like new folks, they see drop shipping, they see Amazon, they see copywriting, they see all of these opportunities, and they don't commit to one. They've got their foot in a bunch of different spaces. So creating that echo chamber of just positive reinforcement, whether that be like in a community that's focused on the same goal, has been just a tremendous benefit. Previously, if you said, hey, I'm going to try and run up Amazon, and you just have like your in real life friends, they might be like, oh, that's risky. And then you may pull back. And you may not tap into all of that opportunity. So having an online community of folks that turned into real life relationships has been, just a huge leg up on the competition. And then you just learn, like I said, exponentially faster.
Yeah, I think, that's really interesting about, finding people with, similar interests, because they're going to support you in a different way. And because like your friends and family want to support you from a really base level, like your safety, keep a roof over your head, make sure, you're feeding yourself and your family. And that's legitimate. That's so legitimate. But when you have something that you can dive into, I think it's, you got to have people that have similar goals to kind of tell you that you're not crazy.
100%. Like my dad, I tell him kind of what's going on, and I'm like, hey, yeah, I did like pretty good this month. And he's in his 70s and he has really no concept of what's going on. So, for that may not be the best feedback loop, because, he grew up in an era where you work the 9 to 5, you do very well for yourself. And, you have the space and the time and the resources to live a very nice life. Now there's so many opportunities. Like for me, it would be foolish not to tap into it, at least see what's going on. So,
Totally.
There's no like ill will towards my dad when he's like, hey, are you sure this is the right thing? He just doesn't have the concept. So understanding that and just having some grace with it is important.
Well, most definitely. I think that like, there's all these conversations about the differences between our generations. You're talking, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, as me as a millennial, first of all, we get a bad rap for basically everything we do. I think they said we ruined everything from like toilet paper to avocado toast. But, our folks grew up in a time where they were told, graduate high school, go to college, get a job, like you said, work your 9 to 5, buy a house, start a family. And, I think the world tells us that we don't necessarily want that. And I know that there's a lot, like, I know that I want that, but it's not necessarily as obtainable as it once was. One thing I realized recently is that, things like a housing crisis isn't necessarily just caused by lack of housing, but it's caused by for-profit, organizations that are there, buying up entire blocks of real estate in order to make a buck. And so our parents didn't have to fight BlackRock, or I don't even know who the hell they are, but
Vanguard.
Exactly, right? But now we're like, we have to get creative with how we make money, how we, kick off our lives. And it's just a weird concept to like wrap your head around and tell your folks, like, I'm pretty sure like when I was going for my first job, my mom's like, take your resume and walk into the office. And I was like, I'm not doing that. They're accepting it online. Are you crazy?
Right. Yeah, it's super interesting. I've been like toying with this idea. I tweeted about it the other day, but things are changing so fast. You have AI, you have all of these different tools that are going to really allow entrepreneurship and like the small business to thrive. You look at what AI can do with like images, and you can create a really high quality image in 4 minutes. I was just messing around and like making one of my dog, and it like with a text prompt got it like dialed in. And so what I kind of think is going to happen over the next like 5 to 10 years is you're going to see this like small business boom, just because all of the resources that you need are $20 a month. And so to get into that space now before like it really escalates is super advantageous in my opinion. And if you don't, it'll be interesting to see the impacts that it has throughout all markets. But, I'm kind of gearing up just to be like, small business oriented and, just adapt with the market as these new extremely powerful tools come into the different spaces.
Yeah. I think that, the idea of, a small business, they say the small business is the backbone of America, right? And, there's truth to that. But also, what they don't talk about in small business is how the people running them have to rely on, number one, themselves, right? And I think that there's these characteristic traits that can be learned, skills that can be developed in order to be successful. People aren't necessarily born good business people, and you can develop into it. And there, like you said earlier, there's so much content out there to allow anyone to do it. But then, the difference is that everyone has a different starting point in the game of life.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I look at, you mentioned like the millennials and like, I think it's Gen Z get a bad rap, but there's some like just killers in that space, like 14-year-olds that are just absolutely so much more advanced than, I was when I was that age. And so it'll just be super interesting if they tap into that right echo chamber where they can go. Because, the technological competencies at such a young age is extremely impressive. And so I think we're just going to see this huge boom of entrepreneurship, and the small business is going to come just back really, really fast, but it'll be in creative ways.
Yeah. I think it's really true that growing up as the generation of the internet is something that's super special, but also there's these parts that, I get concerned about from time to time, right? Like, one thing that I have a hard time with is hustle culture, because don't get me wrong, I believe in hustling. I believe in putting in the work, and, work is the magic that creates success. But also, you don't want to live to work. You want to work to live. Like, I get concerned with like this whole idea, drop shipping, Amazon, Bitcoin, NFT, all these things are things that, people like dive into, and they think that they have to just keep shaking until something falls out. But you don't get to like live your life. And so that's also something I like think about a lot.
Yeah, I think it's probably a reaction to something. Like, I think that over the last like 10 years, in my opinion, you've seen two extremes. You've seen folks that are not about like the hustle culture, and then you have the ones that take it like really, really, far, and just like will grind things, to nothing. So it's interesting to watch. I feel like the pendulum will swing where people find more of a balance. But if you do just push it for, it doesn't take that long, like 6 months to 2 years, you can just set yourself up then to transition from that hustle, mindset into more of a business oriented and, pulling levers in a methodical way that'll really enable your success. So I do think the pendulum will swing to more of a balanced approach as we get comfortable in this new space and navigating like change that is happening at just an exponential rate.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that also, my own biases are probably shown there, and you see the things that you want to see or you think you see. But like, yeah, it's one of those things that like in the past, I was just having this conversation with a coworker today. I started working at SellerSnap 5 years ago in 2018. And when I came on, I was like number 5, and then I was number 3. And so, there was just so much work to be done. And she was my girlfriend, and my wife now would attest to it, that there was like a lot of late nights and phone call. Like, sometimes we'd be driving somewhere, and then we'd be like, pull over. She would jump in the driver's seat. I'd pull out my laptop and start working. There's a lot of that. And then last year or 2 years ago, when I got married, was like, I took like 3 weeks or a month off for like an event and the honeymoon, right?
Okay.
And we had finally built a team, and the team is super capable and super smart and better at everything than me at this point. And it was like the first time that I was like, oh crap, like this is how we should be doing it. And now, because I was able to kind of let go, and then I came back refreshed and ready to go, and then ready to support the team. So when I came back refreshed and somebody else needed to take that time, they were sick, they had family, they wanted to go on vacation, I was able to cover for them and support them so they could come back refreshed and do it again for the next person. We found ourselves in this like loop of being super, super supportive. And I think that, kind of going on my train of thought, but I think that the point is that like working hard and hustling is a strategy. It's a means to an end, but it's not the whole game.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that might be a driver. What I've noticed in the corporate space over the last like 5 to 6 years is that the very large corporations, at least for the realm of folks that I talk to, there's a sense of urgency that, maybe 5 to 6 years ago there wasn't. And I think that's creating outcomes where people are reevaluating. Obviously, in 2020, when you gave people remote work and you gave them, the opportunity to like take care of themselves, go to the gym rather than sitting in a car commuting to work, that was a real glimpse into the possibilities that exist now in this day and age. And I think that seeing that gap as a small business owner and looking at the folks that we have on our team, we try and just say, hey, like, I would rather you, work in a way that is going to allow you to just be here for the long haul.
Yeah.
And try and squeeze every bit of value out of you, because you have to be a good steward with the people that you're working with.
Most
like,
definitely.
If they need a break, we've had this fight with, one of our team members is like, we don't want you grinding it this hard. Like,
yeah,
we need to relax a little bit, do the work, do your 8 hours. I don't really care when you do it, as long as like you're optimizing for your, yourself, like the work gets done, it's cool. And I see that lacking a little bit. The folks that I speak to in the corporate environment, they're now trying to kind of take back a little bit of that influence where people got a taste of freedom. So it'll be interesting to see where we land in, 2 to 3 years with that. But I think that people will gravitate towards spaces that understand that life is more complicated than it's ever been.
Yep.
And, folks that allow them to take care of themselves, go to the gym, spend time with family are probably going to win, in my opinion.
Also, if you're sick,
100%. Yeah, go home. That drives me up a wall. Like I've got, bless their hearts, but I've got some 9-to-5 like coworkers that are like, they'll be on the computer when, they're like ill, they should be in bed, they should recover. And you're just extending the amount of time that you're going to be sick.
Yes, why don't we talk about this? Go to sleep for 2 days and then come back. Like you'll be better on day 3 than if you tried to work.
Yeah. But they're fighting a game that they can't win, where they're sitting in a space where they're totally dependent on one entity. And so like, if that relationship sours or that entity is firm with the amount of value that they need to derive from that person, then the person that is that worker feels like, they're going to be vulnerable. And so I understand why they do it, but that's just not something that I would want to, put out into the universe. And to be like the folks that I work with, they don't, but like, there's a lot of anxiety out there, from like the management side, they're pretty good about it, but talking to folks with like at other firms, like I think that they may be a little bit more against the wall, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think it's an old school way of thinking, right? I think that, we keep going back to these generational stereotypes and definitely right about some things, but probably wrong about some of the other ones. But,
100%.
We also, I think, are the most, we have the most EQ, like we have the most emotional capacity to like really, understand like the people that we work with and try to be compassionate. That's the word I'm looking for. Like we have the most compassion and empathy for the people around us. And I think that especially as, your kind of thought, your hypothesis about having more of these like small businesses that are run by these empathetic and compassionate people, I think that will have a positive effect on our world.
100%.
And I think it's going to be a really great thing to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, and this has been something that's happened with me over the last like 5 years, is there is a lot of like wisdom and like traditional things that you can derive a lot of value out of. Like the work ethic from, 30, 40 years ago is probably a good thing. But then we can also layer the learnings that we've had over the last like 10 years and combine those and really, change people's lives in a positive way rather than just looking at it through one lens, I think.
Yeah. And I saw something on Instagram the other day, and it's funny that like we're comparing, decades, and we're saying that because, people are saying that this is the laziest generation ever and no one wants to work. I literally saw an Instagram post where it was like a Wall Street Journal article from like 1999 and a different article from, the 1980s. And it was interviewing managers that says no one wants to work these days. So that's just like a thing. It's that, older managers say, just like your parents think that your music is just noise,
Right. Right. Well, in that moment, when you talk in such generalities, like nobody wants to work for you.
Yeah.
Like there might be something that you should like internally look at. Like if you're talking about the, maybe when I was growing up, I started at like a grocery store, and that was the opportunity that I had. Now a 15-year-old could go make YouTube clips and make 10 times as much money off of making a YouTube clip. So why would they want to go to the grocery store when they can spend 3 hours on a clip and they can make a lot more? So, there's just different opportunities. And so they need to figure out a way to attract folks to want to do their role. So I don't think the generation is lazy. I think they just have a ton of opportunities at their disposal.
But I think that I bet you in 100 years, actually even before that, in 50 years, when Gen Z is like in upper management and they're looking at whatever Gen D or E, I don't even know what comes next, that they're going to be like, these guys are lazy. Nobody wants to work. But I also envision it being like the Jetsons anyway. So there's just robots doing everything. So
yeah, I mean,
maybe they actually won't want to.
Yeah, they won't need to because like everything's taken care of for sure.
But yeah, I think that, in terms of your Amazon and e-commerce business, I mean, how big is your team and how does that team kind of operate?
Yeah, so there's different tiers. So I work with probably 6 or 7 guys, like that's kind of like a mastermind group. And that's where we derive a lot of like thoughts and, kind of project out like, where do you think things are going? And then if you get into more of the like core team that I work with on like a daily basis, it's a team of 4 now. It's the 2 guys, Max and Max, on the Prep Talk podcast. We talk quite a bit and, kind of strategize and kind of just think about, where things are going. How do we want to differentiate in the marketplace? And then we recently added an employee out of the Philippines to just supplement some of the gaps that we have, making sure that, we're looking at all the opportunities that are available. We're keeping a clean back end because that's not something that we were really focused on when we were kind of in a scale phase, because you really have to, prove out that proof of concept before you figure everything out. And so that's a space that I think folks trip up with a lot, is that they want to have everything dialed in before they begin. And we just started. And now after taking advantage of opportunities, now we're in a refined phase. Make sure that the business is operating well, make sure that we don't have leakage, that sort of thing. So that's where we're at. And, we're training up our employee right now. And over the next 3-4 months, I expect her to really take off. She's really sharp.
Yeah, I think that's a really great little nugget that you kind of glossed over there. You can't let perfection hinder progress.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think perfectionists live miserable lives, unfortunately, because they need everything dialed in to the point where nothing actually happens. I've been a perfectionist, so I understand. Like, there was a point in my life where I was worried about everything, but you have to just lean into the process and see where it takes you and accept the fact that you will eventually figure it out.
That's what happened to me with this podcast. Our head of marketing, Tali, and I have been speaking about this with our team, our head of product, Adrian, and Danny from our team. And we were speaking about this for Seller Step for literally years. And we just never did it. And finally, we're like, what is stopping us? And, we ended up saying look, let's just record 3. And if they all suck, then we'll get rid of them. We just won't use them. And what we found out really quickly is that they didn't suck.
Right.
Because we're smart and we're capable and we're able to foresee some problems. But I was so stuck on, do I have the right mic? Do I have a ring light that I couldn't move forward.
Right. 100%. That's how it works. I mean, it's funny. I just got better lighting. If you look at the first few episodes of our podcast, I looked ill because our lighting was so bad, but you just have to figure it out as you go. And now if a buddy, in our group is like, hey, I was thinking about making some videos. Here's my spreadsheet. Take it, go buy everything. This is what you need to get. And I would advise people to be very lean at the very beginning.
Totally.
And to see where it goes. You look at the biggest podcast out there with Rogan, and he just started it for fun. And I think that's something, is that you need to just do things that you enjoy doing and have zero expectation of any sort of monetary benefit or, social benefit, whatever it is. Just do stuff you like doing and that'll come through. And now you see, Rogan's done thousands of episodes, and he started it probably in a bedroom at his condo, and now it's huge. So
I got a piece of advice about content was that when you start doing these things, someone told me to just start scrolling to the very bottom of everyone's Instagram feed of all your favorite creators. Just scroll to the bottom, and then you'll realize everyone except for Bobby something. She interviews all of.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
She interviewed Drake and Shaq and It's like really like uncomfortable and cringy. Everyone but her is like starts somewhere, in their basement. But whatever her deal is, what is her name? Bobby Alhoff?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Althoff. Bobby Althoff. That's her Instagram. Found it easy because she has 2.9 million followers with 60 posts. And she's like, she starts off interviewing Drake. Like, I don't understand. Like, who knows? It's magic. But like, that's the thing is going back to what we were talking about, taking that leap of faith and like getting into something, whether it's like, a new project. Like for me, it was like this project, which is not another econ podcast, or a new job, or diving into like the entrepreneur world is super important. But like one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was that having a little bit of focus is also going to take you a really long way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't have shiny object syndrome occasionally. And in controlling that and then just hammering down on a strength is going to take you so much further than anything else. I mean, in July or August, after doing pretty well with Amazon and scaling it up a little bit, I was looking at rental properties. But why would I do that in retrospect rather than just running with the current objective and then, doubling down at some point? I'm sure I'll have the capacity to do rental properties because that's probably a good opportunity in the long run. But just double down, focus on one thing, get really, really good at it. And then all of the skills that you will learn along the way will allow you to then take advantage of new opportunities when you have the space to actually take care of them. You built out the team that will allow you to go into a new space.
Yeah, that's quite insightful. The shiny I've never heard that before. Shiny object syndrome. I think that's incredible because I have that all the time. Can't tell you how many times I see like a new tool online that's supposed to help me with like my workflow or whatever. And I sign up for a trial and then I completely forget about it because it didn't help.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no magic pill. If I had to suggest one thing, it would be trying to if you're like addicted to scrolling on your phone, get rid of those apps. And then, because there's so much noise that's going to come in. If you're thinking about doing something, Instagram or TikTok probably has the profile of entrepreneurship, but it doesn't have a focus. And so you need to say you're not interested in all of the other noise and then just start, really diving in on one thing.
Yeah, I love that. It's important. That focus is super, super important. And then once you hammer it down, you can go and do all the other things. Like you look at I think about like these athletes that are like they're the best in their field in their sport, but they're athletes first. They make their money. They hone that skill. They're able to not necessarily put it on autopilot, but get those operating procedures in place, train game. And then they can go and do all these other ventures that they want to do.
I mean, I think of Phelps when you bring that up. I mean, the guy was in the pool obsessively for years before anybody knew him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about Kobe Bryant. I still watch videos and it gives me goosebumps about like his work ethic.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit of obsession will go a long way. I mean, those are the people that end up winning and the people that just focus on one thing obsessively. I think about the interview that he did and he's talking about his routine. He goes like, I'm up at like 3:00 in the morning. I'm in the gym before all of my teammates have even woken up. I go home for a nap. I then hit another training session. And so he's like doubling his output just by tweaking his schedule.
It's a healthy disregard for the impossible,
You have to. That's where a lot of people get tripped up.
Yeah, man. Pete, as we kind of near the end of this episode, I just wanted to kind of give you the floor. If there's anything that you want to like sum up or any other additional thoughts before we conclude, I would love to hear.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the struggle that I see from folks is not giving yourself enough credit. And I think that, like you kind of said, go to the bottom of anybody's feed and see how bad their first post was and start attracting the folks that are going to help you navigate. It could be Amazon. It could be anything, attracting those people to you so that you have a group of folks that have like goals. Because I know that the guys that I've met through just posting and existing online, we're going to do Amazon while Amazon is really, really good, but they're entrepreneurial. I'm sure there will be new opportunities that we'll figure out together. So go find those 3 or 4 people that are going to help you just navigate all of the change that is coming, and great things are going to happen. So that's the most important thing in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about building meaningful connections, but working hard, being a good person. These are all, things that are going to be important as the world continues to turn.
Yep, 100%.
So, Pete, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I really enjoyed, getting down into the nitty gritty of like how we can different outlooks on life, on business, and on mindset as well. So,
Yeah, Ian, I really appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, everyone. That was another episode of Not Another Econ Podcast. We'll see you next time.